We're recording.
Hello, Yevgen. How you doing?
Hi, Patrick. How are you?
Hi.
It's been a while, like a year ago, when I just started Acuta Bhavadasa class, and I did know like technically basic stuff. So now that it's been almost a year, right?
Yeah, it's been a year. We've met at least a couple of times to discuss your chart, and
And I
so
lost all information, so we start with from
we're
the
kind of
square.
starting from scratch. Yeah. So
Yes.
I guess just to reintroduce myself for anyone watching, I'm Patrick Watson. I am an astrologer. I my experience in astrology has been doing this basically since I was in my mid-teens. So I've been doing this nearly 20 years. I started off learning modern astrology and modern astrological techniques, but in 2006 I became introduced into Hellenistic and traditional forms of astrology, and that's kind of become the one of the main focuses of my approach and my research interests is using traditional astrological techniques. Although I also do use outer planets and look at outer planetary cycles in relation to history. And so my interests in astrology are kind of broad. I do natal astrology, electional astrology, horary astrology, mundane astrology, and even more recently, financial astrology. And I also do rectifications of unknown birth times, which I presume is part of the reason why you sought me out, Yevgen, because you have a particularly interesting and thorny issue with determining your correct time of birth. So we're going to try to use some astrological techniques to see if we can arrive at a time of birth which accounts for some really basic facts about your life, as well as more specific details of the timing of events. So I guess the place that I try to start when I do a rectification is just to establish what it is that we know for certain about the time that you were born. So uh, when it comes to the date, the actual date is potentially in dispute for your chart, right?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
so tell me what it is that you absolutely know for certain, what your mother has reported to you about your birth time.
hmm So, if you remember my situation, I was kind of confused because my mother told me that I was born almost midnight, 5 minutes before or after midnight on January 11th. So this make me feel unsure, because if I was born on January 10, 11:55, or January 11:55, it's like the fastest planet moon will be kind of in a different house.
Exactly. So essentially, here I can kind of show anyone who's watching what we're kind of basically trying to decide between. Um, Over here we have January 10th, 1975, at 11:55 p.m. when the moon was in Capricorn, or we're looking at the last 5 minutes of that date on
Yeah.
January 11th, where Libra is still rising, but the moon has moved ahead by about 12 degrees. And so this is very tricky because the really the there are there are so few differences between these time periods. Now, just out of thoroughness, I've included the charts which represent 5 minutes before midnight, so 11:55 p.m. on January 10th, as well as 12:05 on January 11th, because you said it's 5 minutes before or after the hour of midnight, and then here again 11:55 p.m. on January 11th versus 12:05 a.m. on January 12th. So one of the one of the real difficulties with comparing these times is they're very, very similar. When we look at these two times, for example, so
The
12:05
first
a.m. Oh, pardon me. Go ahead.
The first thing that immediately catch my attention that the first version, the natal moon create aspect with natal Uranus, and the second one, it doesn't create any aspect with the Uranus, but exactly 14 degree in a position with natal Saturn in the 10th house. So maybe this two situation can describe the personality or the life path or something that we can discuss. So, and
Right.
in my previous research with all foreigners from my country who arrived to the United States to live forever, most of them have the second version. When the dark moon, like 3 people that I know have this similar situation who immigrated to United States, like me. I'm like, wow. But the first version, when the moon just entered 4th house and create the Uranian aspect, right? So
Right.
what happens with that Uranus? The people.
So the moon, because the moon moves so quickly, and because it goes through so many different applying and separating aspects, even in the course of one day, the moon's transits are often connected to the general mood of the moment. In natal astrology or in horary astrology, you often look at the applications of the moon to get a sense of the trajectory of an entire line of inquiry. And so similarly, the lunar applications are given a great deal of importance in natal astrology because they can also suggest the basic nature of the nativity as a whole and what it's kind of heading towards. And so with the moon making and applying sextile to Uranus in the second, if you were born near the beginning of the calendar date of January 11th, then we would say that this might make someone more prone to ups and downs in their material well-being and their material welfare, because Uranus is suggestive of disruptions and unpredictable, upsetting circumstances with regard to one's material wealth. So having the moon applying to that Uranus in the second house would sort of show that that is somehow emphasized, but in a way which is maybe more favorable, perhaps, or not quite as bad because of the harmonious nature of the sextile. In honesty, it's a fairly weak aspect, so it's not like there would be a very, very strong manifestation of this. It sort of has to be something which is taken as a kind of soft sort of quality. Now, in stark contrast to that, though, is if you were born near the end of that calendar date, going into January 12th, the moon is making that exact opposition to Saturn. And we would definitely associate this more closely with perhaps a predisposition towards more depressive emotional states and situations of where one faces rejection or exile, especially in relation to one's parents or father figure, especially in a night chart, because the father tends to be represented by Saturn in a night chart, and Saturn also represents the 4th house, since it rules the 4th house and the 10th. And the moon, because the moon often represents the mother, especially in night charts, we might also think that this wouldn't just be applicable to you insofar as the moon is your sextile, but we might also think that the mother would experience this distinct situation of rejection or exile, because the moon is in its opposite sign and opposing this very kind of cruel Saturn. And so those are two so we have two kind of different pictures which are painted just from the applying aspect. Now, I should say that even if you were born earlier on that calendar date, even if you were born close to the beginning of January 11th, you might say that some of these things could still apply due to the moon being in a general opposition, sign-based opposition to Saturn, and with the ruler of the 10th being in the 4th, etc. It would just be a matter of like which one speaks louder in your life. And so that's what we could get from a more interpretive level. Now, because this is one of the only differences that we can really find in the chart, the exact position of the moon. One of the way you could approach trying to find out which one it is by looking at transits in Capricorn and seeing if they match up more with the position of the moon earlier in the day or later in the day. And the problem there, though, is that this could be really complicated by the fact that there are also other angles happening here at the same time. So say we saw a relevant event, occur when a planet crossed the early degrees of Capricorn, we might say, oh, that probably shows that this could be like a Saturn transit to your moon in the 4th house. Well, the problem with that is because we know that the moon at this time was close to the IC, it would be difficult to distinguish whether or not it was a transit to the IC or to the moon, especially because the moon has some significations which overlap with the meaning of the IC, because the IC is also a place that relates to family and origins. And we know that in a night chart, the moon especially tends to represent mother figures. So this is a really tricky case, but I do think that I had a way of figuring out which one that it was. So, and I'm interested to see if to hear your reasons for why you think this does or doesn't make sense. But I think the reason why I ultimately settled on you being born towards the end of January 11th or at the very beginning of January 12th is due to the one other difference that we could find between these two times. So I'm going to do this. All right, and then I'm going to do this so we can compare them. So one of the big differences between your chart if you were born at
beginning of 11th,
the
right?
beginning of 11, would be if where is it? Okay. Yes. So one of the differences we might notice is the fact that there are these kind of abstract parts of the chart called lots, and there's a special class of lots, and the lots are based on planetary arcs, the distances between 2 points in the chart and then projected from the ascendant. And while these aren't astronomically based, they are linked to the astronomical distance between the planets or points, and these are supposed to have meaning in themselves. So when we look at the positions of these lots, a lot of fortune, spirit, necessity, eros, courage, victory, nemesis, one of the main differences between being born at the beginning of January 11th is that your lot of nemesis is in Gemini. And if you were born at the end of January 11th, going into January 12th, then your lot of nemesis would be in Cancer. So if I flip back between these, you can see how they don't really change. The only other one that changes is the lot of exaltation, but it's not really a lot that we can do a whole lot with. So we can see that the lot of nemesis was in Gemini, January 10th going into January 11th, but January 11th into January 12th, it's in Cancer. Now the way that we can use this information to determine whether or not you were born one time or the other is by looking at the zodiacal releasing of that lot, because the lot of nemesis is supposed to have to do with more tragic incidents in one's life, and it shows periods of downfall or periods of trial in one's life. And so we would want to look at these zodiacal releasing from these 2 points in order to tell basically which one seems to match up with a tragic event in your life. And so I actually wrote a blog post about your case, Yevgen, because I thought it was such a good example of how you can use the lot of nemesis to distinguish between these 2 times you're born. So you can see here, I can zoom in as well so you can see that better. So this is your chart if you were born at the beginning of January 11th, and this is your chart if you were born at the end of January 11th. You can see the lot of nemesis is in Gemini previously, it's in Cancer later. So when you compare the zodiacal releasing from Gemini and Cancer, then we see that you reached a loosing of the bond on May 11th, 1992. Regardless of which lot you released from, we know that there was a major transition phase in early 1992, rather after May 11th, 1992. Now, if we were interpreting this from the lot of nemesis in Gemini, then we would be looking at the condition of Mercury and planets which are testifying to the sign of Sagittarius. So in your chart, that would be, actually, I can probably just flip back to this. So we would say if you were born with a lot of nemesis in Gemini, then we would say that Mercury rules the general period, and that Jupiter rules the loosing of the bond, which occurs to Sagittarius, and Mars is present in the sign of Sagittarius, and it's in a cadent sign relative to the lot of fortune. So this would tell us that, if you were born with a lot of nemesis in Gemini, that this big transition period would likely have to do with divisions with one's friends or peers, or even involve difficulties or injuries or accidents from being in motion, like being perhaps an accident on a bicycle or car or something, or getting into a fight on a bus.
Physical traumas and violence.
Physical challenges. So we also know that if this is cadent relative to fortune, though, that it would be less important in one's life and wouldn't really describe, it wouldn't be very impactful in the life necessarily.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's what we would think would happen if you were born with the lot of nemesis in Gemini. And also more generally, we would say that the ruler of the lot would describe the nature of one's downfall. And so we would say that it would be because of Mercury in the 5th house. So we might say controversies in dating or controversial creative acts, which would be one's downfall.
Sexuality, children, creativity, fun, Well,
and we might also say then or rumors or something like that.
The assassination of the reputation.
Perhaps because we know that the lot of nemesis to do with one's downfalls. Whereas if you were born with a lot of nemesis in Cancer, then if we look at the ruler, we can see it's ruled by that moon in the 4th house, which at this time of the day is making that exact opposition to the worst planet in the chart. And so we would say that the loosing of the bond to Capricorn at age 17, if you were born with a lot of nemesis in Cancer, would be highlighting this topic of exile or rejection, and being cast out, in a sense, from one's home or by one's parents. And so what you told me
probably
happened.
I should briefly describe the situation, right?
Right, yeah, sure.
So it's very, and it was very prominent event for the whole family when on my mother's birthday, when my mother turned 40, in front of the all guests, the birthday party of hers, my father got drunk and physically, verbally attacked her. And after that, we had to leave the house and live with my mother parents for the rest of the, uh, for the, after that. So we didn't come back. And yeah, so in that Saturn represent the distant father, right? The moon kind of look represent mother and look kind of not as evil as that Saturn, malefic Saturn for
Right.
the
Although
night
we know
chart.
although we also know that that moon is being maltreated essentially by that opposition to Saturn. So
Yeah. Okay.
this loosening of the bond happening from Cancer to Capricorn is really much more evocative of what happened, because you said it was on October 26th, 1992,
Yeah.
that this event happened where you were essentially exiled from the house.
Yeah.
And this matches the topics involved in this releasing. But it only makes sense if you start from Cancer, because it's the moon which becomes, involved in this loosening of the bond, and involves the Saturn by virtue of ruling the sign and being present in the general period. And the other thing that makes this really stand out is the fact that, I mean, this was like a life-changing event for you.
So it's a
And this
new,
was a,
it's a new dark moon, right?
right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Can we
so
describe briefly the quality of that, the quality of the moon in this situation?
so the moon has no light of its own. The moon is under the beams. We would say the moon was not able to be seen, and at that time of day as well, the moon would not have been anywhere above the horizon to provide light. So it's on the darkest night of the month that you were born. So I would say that some of the qualities of the moon as it's waning towards the conjunction is that it is moving towards fulfillment or completion of its cycle, towards its ends, or bringing things to completion. And that the kind of person associated with this, with it, and people who bring existing things to completion.
So it's the beginning of the completely new cycle, ending of the
It's the ending of a
dynasty,
previous
and
cycle, right?
yeah, beginning of your own.
Right. It's the beginning, it's
And
the
which is
ending and the beginning.
that's why so many friends of mine who immigrated to over the over the seas have this thing.
Perhaps.
So you
Yeah,
start like
perhaps.
completely new as it gets.
Right, right. Yeah, it is yeah, I would say that makes sense. I also was born at a new moon as well, and I suppose I've moved
Quick
quite far away
question.
from where I came.
What's the difference when the sun and moon like in my chart just finishing and started new, and when it's already crossed the path of the sun and already going away from the sun?
So when it's applying towards the sun versus when it's
Yeah.
separating. So I would say that when it's applying towards the sun, that is really the proper ending phase. Whereas once the moon is opening up from the sun, that's the opening of the new cycle. So that's really when we say that's when people are initiating new things. I would say there's kind of it's sort of like the difference between someone who maybe writes their own original songs, who that might be the waxing moon, versus someone who maybe takes existing songs and makes the definitive versions of them, or maybe someone who takes other people's songs and mixes them up like a DJ to make something new, brings them to kind of completion. So we'd say that they both can be creative, but the new moon after the conjunction with the sun might be someone who brings new things into the world, whereas the person born when the moon is waning towards the sun might be people who bring existing forms to completion. As a very general
Yeah, I
kind of
understand.
interpretation of that
Who
placement. Yeah.
wants to dig into it? We have amazing book, I believe, The Dark Moon by Demetra George, or if I can find it, if I have it, it's somewhere. Yeah. 1 second. Mysteries of the Dark Moon. I just started. Yeah, it's a Demetra George book, I believe.
Ah, yes. I haven't read that.
Yeah, I just started. Okay.
So, so that was one way that I was able to figure out that maybe you were born later in that day because the lot of nemesis would be in Cancer, which made this make sense. Whereas, and that you would say that was a life-changing event, and this happened in the sign's angular fortune. So we know that this is when this lot would be most active and potentially at its most negative. So we know that this is also, in some ways, this is reassuring because, this is the worst it could have gotten. This is the worst that this lot could have been activated.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we look at the transits for that date that you were exiled from your house by your father, we can see that Uranus was making a partile conjunction to the moon, but only if you were born at
Second time.
Yeah, the second time, at the later time.
5 minutes before the midnight on
Exactly.
June 11 to 12. Okay.
Exactly. So, because if you were born at the very beginning of the day, then Uranus would have hit your moon back in 1989, and you didn't have any kind of corresponding event. And the reason why this really makes sense as far as this transit to your moon, Uranus is, like we kind of talked already, Uranus is a kind of
little
upsetting, a
electric
disruptive
shock
sort of planet. Exactly.
Yeah.
So Uranus to your moon in the 4th house opposite your Saturn, that was an unprecedented situation.
Nothing
where you were without
that Uranus, because Saturn's far away, distant. Yeah.
So we would have expected something like this to have happened in 1989 if you were born earlier in the day. Because you were born later.
Mm-hmm.
That made the Uranus transit make sense with that exact date when you have that loosening the bond. So we have a major transit to the moon happening on this day when you were exiled from your house opposite Saturn, and this is happening at the same time that you were having this big loosening of the bond relative to the lot of nemesis, but again, only if you were born later in the day. So, we have a combination of a transit to the moon making sense with being later in the day, and then the lot being at the right sign to make sense and qualitatively account for what happened. Not only that, but you also said in the rest of that time period, that loosening of the bond to Capricorn lasted from May 11th, 1992 to July 30th, 1994. And you said that your grandmother died at the L3 foreshadowing period. Cancer,
literally
cancer.
After like 5.5, 6 months, she passed away after our
And then at the L3 loosening of the bond to Cancer, in that same loosening of the bond period, your grandfather died. So this is again continuing the themes of tragic circumstances in one's family and the oppressive nature of this Saturn in your chart. So this is another thing which just kind of fits along with the themes that we might expect from someone who was born with moon opposite Saturn, as its next direct applying aspect. The fact that you faced this amount of death and endings in such a short period of time, while you were in that Capricorn loosening of the bond, all within that 27-month period. So to me, that makes it fairly conclusive that you had to have been born in the last 5 minutes of January 11th. So I'm curious to hear what you think of that, if you think that is convincing, and if there's any other issues you've had with this time.
You convinced me. I was just because the first time when we did this, we didn't dig in the first version. So because when in the how we call it, the second house of money, right? The Mercury, the Scorpio. When Uranus in Scorpio creates these like in the bad house creates the very strong aspect to the moon. So it what occurs to me, it's like your body, your environment will be pretty unstable. You will be constantly overdrawn with over exhausted. Your nerve system will be constantly overburned by like the and I don't feel like that.
Right.
So I have in the early part of my life, I had a few neurotic, unstable events, but that's it. So it seems to be the second version fits perfect.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. It's a fantastic example of
We just
that
didn't
technique.
we just didn't investigate the first version. We stick to the first one, and I always felt like, okay, but what about the first one? So yeah, it's pretty clear that the second version fits the best, and even with lots releasing and everything.
Right.
Yeah. Should we elaborate more about that, or we can move forward?
We could probably move forward because I mean, that was the main way that I was able to identify any differences between the charts was a lot of nemesis. So yeah, I think that was about as far as I got. Now we could obviously try to confirm further, that this was the right time by looking at other aspects to your angles, but it was close enough to me to be content with looking at 11:55 to midnight of January 11th as your proper birth time.
Patrick, do you use the parents' charts to do a rectification?
I don't use the parents of the stars to do rectifications currently.
Is there technique, legit technique, or just
yeah, I mean,
does it make sense?
I would probably say that in a similar way that we did with looking at the application of the moon to Uranus, we might look at the exact parents that were being formed on those days. I think the trickiest issue though is I think they would be very similar between these two time frames. I don't know if they would be sufficiently different enough in order to make a determination. Maybe there would be one star that might be visible on on the previous day that wouldn't be the next, but it's hard for me to imagine that would be particularly useful. Now, I think where you might have better luck, perhaps, in looking at parents when doing a rectification would be, say, if there was like a range of time on one day where, like, maybe say you weren't sure if you were born between like 1 to 5 p.m. On a given date, then there's a significant range of motion the Earth would have turned. So the parents, there would be more options potentially for what planets might be rising or culminating or setting or anti-culminating at the time. But because we are comparing two times which are basically 24 hours apart, the risings and settings of the stars would be very, very similar, and it would be very hard to distinguish. So in this, I'm not saying that you couldn't use parents at all in rectification. I personally do not, but I can understand how you would do it. I don't think you'd be able to do it in your particular case because of the two time periods you're comparing, where they would be very similar.
Okay, so we're done with this topic, right? So
yeah, sure.
Okay, no, I'm just, if you have something to say, because you wrote the article and people can find it on your website, right?
Yeah, that's at Patrick Watson astrology.com, just on my blog. If you just type in a lot of nemesis, you can find my little write-up on Yevgen's case, which I think is a fairly compelling example of this technique in action. I also used a lot of nemesis to look at the differences between the Olsen twins, Mary Kate and Ashley Olsen. Because they're twins, they were born very close to the same time period, and the only lot they have between them, which is different, is the lot of nemesis. And so it's very interesting because I forget which one had the hospitalization around age 18 for some sort of personal struggles, or one of the twins ended up having to basically go to a rehab center, but the other one didn't. And the one that did had the loosening of the bond that was more malefic with respect to the lot of nemesis. And I think it was the twin that has the lot of nemesis ruled by the moon, and so we knew that the donor was more related to body, whereas the other one had a lot of nemesis ruled by Mercury. And so while that event had a negative impact on both of their careers because they both have the same spirit, then a lot of nemesis were actually different. So it was only one of the twins who had to go to rehab.
One learned by her body experience, and another just hypothetically witnessed that her Mercury.
Witnessing it. Exactly. And being the sibling of a famous, sibling pair. So it's really interesting, really looking at the charts of twins, because in many cases their charts seem indistinguishable, but on the level of the lot, even 1 minute of difference in their birth times can produce differences in the lots. And so it really gives us a good opportunity to see exactly what the power of the lots is. And so I think that is actually very, very significant.
Especially, when it's 1 degree already in another lot on another decan.
Right? So it was in a different sign, different ruler, and then the timing of the lot, came out differently. So that's really looking at the lots. It may seem kind of crazy to the outside person. You're not even you're looking at planetary periods with zodiacal releasing, which are astronomical in nature, but the lots themselves, they're just these seemingly imaginary points. Why should they mean anything? And yet here they are, kind of working. And able to describe the nature and timing of different events in our lives.
That's fascinating. So very clear to me about my birth chart with the situation of 5 minutes plus minus. So we figure out that I was born on the new moon. Technically, it's not the first version. It would be considered the how we terminology wise.
The moon is applying to the sun. It's at it's in the closing phase. It's the moon as it is approaching its point of rebirth. And so you were born at that as the moon was still decreasing in light, as it was still reaching newness.
And if talking about decans, so if we take the second version, we clarify that. So it's in what decan?
So if you were born, one sec, let me get
and what that means and how, what do you have?
Right. So I suppose, decans are a more minor dignity, at least compared to today.
Accidental. That's how we call it.
They use. I know that. Decanic astrology was more fundamental, perhaps, in Egyptian astrology, especially. I may disappoint some people here, but I I don't use the decans too much. I mean, I do keep into account that that they exist. Like I know that maybe someone with the sun in the first decan of Leo might be very different from someone who has, the sun in the third decan of Leo. Knowing that the first decan is sort of more sun-like versus the last one, which is more Jupiter-like, or the middle one, which is more I actually got that wrong. The last one's Mars-like.
And it's tricky because out the Chaldean order, like several different, like how it's called, schools. And then it's like when I change it in the program, sometimes it shows that my moon in the moon decan, sometimes it's in the Venus, and sometimes it's just even like astrological sign, like in the Leo.
Yeah, so one second. Let me grab the reference for decans. Now,
if you don't like them,
so I can. Yeah, I mean, I think they are kind of useful, but I just want to show what they are. So you have the decanic faces here.
A lot of students in my class, they mention it, and it's this Austin Coppock book, 36 Faces.
Yeah, I'm on the waiting list to receive a copy. I did not get.
Well, I tried to buy it, and it's gone. Yeah,
I didn't buy it when it was first in print, and I'm kicking myself now that I hadn't done it when it was out. I just figured it would continue to be available. So I'm waiting for whenever he releases the second edition, and I'll very eager to read.
As an artist, I want to do like high-end album book of the 36 reflections on that one day. But it just, when the book will be available.
Now, there's also different versions of the decanic faces. I know that, for example, this is I guess, the more traditional assignment of decanic faces, but I also know that there's another tradition of decanic faces where it basically follows the order of domicile rulerships of that element in order from the one that it begins with. So, for example, the sign of Libra is ruled by Venus. So Venus has the first decanic face. Then the next air sign in order would be Aquarius. So Saturn is the second decan ruler, and then Mercury is the next ruler of air. So Mercury gets the third decanic phase. So you get the first third of Mercury is Venusian, and then the next third would be more Saturnian, and then the next third would be more mercurial. But
how we interpret that, if your ascendant hits the Saturnian thing, so it means that you will be well-trained or disciplined artist, but if it will be more, it's how we approach that thing.
Yeah, so I would probably just look at it as modifications of Venus as the ruler of the sign. So having your ascendant rise in the first 10 degrees of Libra might, this is a Venus ruled sign overall, and the Venus decan. So we might say that this would be someone who exhibits more clearly or more unambiguously the qualities of Venus, being perhaps very attractive or artistically inclined, and someone with social graces. But with Venus, rather with the ascendant rising in the middle decan of the sign, we might say this person has slightly more Saturnian quality to their Venusian character. So someone maybe who is more formal in their social disposition, and someone who is more concerned with fairness insofar as it relates to legal systems or economic systems. Or
so it technically, the first version, the beginning, will be more artistic and shallow, and deeper we go, it will be a lawyer, a Libra lawyer.
Yeah, and then the very last one would be like the mercurial decan, which would perhaps
Science,
be
speech, writing, right?
yeah, maybe more like a poet or someone who exhibits more mercurial qualities of like, intelligence. And that's not to, I mean, to me, it's hard to really pin down if that makes a whole lot of sense, especially since I know that like there's this older version of Titanic Faces, which is probably more legit. I just don't know a whole lot about it, and I haven't seen a reason necessarily to get really into it. I presume that it acts as a way of modifying, the ruler of the Ascendant. But I've had a lot of luck just from looking at the house of the ruler of the Ascendant and the aspects that it has in its general quality in terms of describing one's basic character, and in some cases things about their appearance. But I don't know how much emphasis to really put on that.
And it's a bad business probably to extract one little piece of the chart. You have to always to take That's the biggest mistake of the beginners of the astrology, to do that. That's what I learned on my experience. Well, okay, so should we I have a long list of questions for you.
Sure, feel free to shoot them at me.
I was playing around with several techniques like solar return, solar arc, progress chart, draconic chart, persona, and it's always speak to you some information, but I couldn't be sure because, for example, solar return, as I was able to comprehend from my brief research. Solar return, it's every year we see what's the major theme will be that year, right? Mm-hmm. Solar arc, it's just one of the progress chart. I'm not clear about that. Draconic chart, I didn't find any comprehensive, clear information. And persona chart, it's like my software, like internal imprint that only clear to me, and other it doesn't relate to external world that people don't see it, right?
Right.
So very brief, like whatever you feel.
Yeah. Okay. So I think probably the one I think is probably simplest to explain, and what I think is most useful, to look at, is probably the solar return. Mm-hmm. So the basic idea of the solar return is, for whatever year of life you're looking at, you would look at the chart of the moment that the sun returns to its natal position. So you were born with the sun at 21 degrees of Capricorn, and so we would cast the chart for when the sun arrives to the degree and minute of that position, and we would say that that chart gives us information about your experience in that particular year. Mm-hmm. Now, so there are a couple of things to keep in mind with that. When people cast solar returns, there's always the question of whether or not you should cast the chart for where you are at that moment, or if you should cast it for the place of your birth. Uh-huh. Because some people say like, oh, if you are living somewhere other than the place you were born, then why not just cast the solar return chart for where you actually are? That would make it perhaps more individualized. Mm-hmm. But others, and what seems to have been more traditionally done, is just to cast a chart for the time and for the place where someone was born. So they call this, basically doing an unrelocated solar return versus a relocated solar return. I tend to favor doing the unrelocated solar return, just casting the solar return for the place that one is born, because I think that it represents not just the return of the position of the sun to its natal position, but also to the place of birth. Mm-hmm. I think it's more properly a return if it's done to even the place, that one was born. So
I play with it. So if I do my natal chart, so I would be Scorpio. But if I'm in Altadena, where I am right now, it would be Cancer. One thing I notice, it will be always will be the same element.
Oh, are you talking about relocating the natal chart?
If I do solar return based.
Oh, solar return natal chart. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's always the same element. Oh, well,
It's,
that probably has to do with the distance between your current location and your birthplace.
So if I go
a
back
third across the world.
So if I cast the chart solar return for this year, and but with Odessa place where I was born, that it will be scorpionic, and I'm like, oh, I will be very probably depressed and like
so
sexually frustrated and deep and depressed. And if I'm here, it will be more of like family cozy and like Cancerian. So it will be all about food and crabby and like collecting the money from government.
All right. Well, thankfully that
but it will be always the same element. It will be water.
I see.
That's.
So I was just doing some quick calculations in my head. So one of the ways I think that can, I think it's easy to get bogged down in looking at this return chart and interpreting it. Like Mars and Uranus are in the 7th house. We might think, a bad breakup or something like that. But I would say that when you're looking at a solar return, you have to focus on the planet, which is the ruler of the year, and focus on that and focus on its condition of the solar return.
Ruler of the year, you mean, what do we...
Ruler of the year, yeah. So the ruler of the year is determined through the 12-year annual perfection cycle. So basically what this says is that for each year of life, there is a planet and sign which is associated with that time. So from age 0 to 1, you would be in a 1st house annual perfection, which is higher than the sign of Libra and the planet
perfection
Venus.
Year technique.
Yeah. So so then age 1 would be the 2nd house, age 2 would be a 3rd house, and so on and so forth. So you return to the 1st house perfection year every multiple of 12, 24, 36, 48.
So I'm 46, so I am right now Sun, so because it's 11 house.
That's right. 48, 48 is a 1st house perfection year, so we go 48, 47, 46. If 46 is old, you're in an 11th house perfection year. Now, what's common then to every person who is 46 is that they are in an 11th house perfection year, where we might expect that one of the major themes for the year would have to do with their connections with friends and alliances and organizations and networks and rewards and prizes and things that one receives as a result of one's actions, because it's the succeeding sign following the 10th. But this is going to turn out very differently for every 46-year-old. Not every 46-year-old has the exact same experience. So part of this is determined by the planet that rules the 11th. So in your chart, this is the Sun in Capricorn. So we would say that in this year, from January 11th, 2021 through to January 11th of 2022, that the Sun would be the planet of the year, would be the ruler of the year, would its transits would be the most felt. And so we would say that the Sun's ingresses into each sign would likely be more obvious in this year. And we would also pay special attention to where the Sun is eclipsed, because those are big solar events of the year. So it explains why in some years solar eclipses seem not to matter too much, whereas in other years they may.
We pay more attention to solar eclipse this year.
Yeah, and to the Sun, to solar events. Yeah,
and the house tells us something, so it means that it will be relating to social network, revisiting old connections, losing some old friends, gaining the new ones.
So we might say, so with the ruler of the 11th being in the 4th, we would say that perhaps it would show that one would entertain like guests and friends in their home, perhaps a little bit like what we're doing now. You know, it sort of shows that the locus of activity is in the home, and that it has to do with sort of I would think, I mean, perhaps in a non-pandemic era, you know, an 11th house perfection like this might have just been a year where maybe you had more parties at your house, or more, you know, guests, you know, at home, or get visitors, perhaps you come to stay, you know, from who you haven't seen in a while, perhaps. Now, that will be common to every time you would have had an 11th house perfection year. So
we keep in mind the two techniques. So we look what's the perfection year, and then we do solar return and see where's the sun and which house.
Yeah, so it's funny because there are different rules that some authors have about what happens when you come to a sun ruled perfection year. Obviously, it's not going to matter so much where the sun is in a solar return, because the sun is always at the same position of the natal sun,
but different house.
But it will occupy a different house in the solar return, and there may be different aspects occurring to the sun at the time of the solar return. So if we look at this, here's the inner wheel is your chart, the outer wheel is your solar return. So we can see that, first of all, the sun is in conjunction to Pluto, and that is really the closest aspect that it makes. The sun is kind of a sextile to Neptune.
I'm just telling you what's going on. Rebound with my sister and change of like big shift in the relationship and communication.
Because it's in the third house.
It's occurred to me. I'm just with, it's a third house.
So we might think that then the sun conjunct Pluto in the third of the solar return would be, a time of power struggles with one's siblings or neighbors or roommates, perhaps, because of because of the presence of the sun in the third house.
But only if it's the chart solar return based on my natal birth. Natal place.
Right.
But if we do,
if we try to do a solar return chart, if you were born earlier in the day, then
no, Patrick, I meant that if we cast solar return my Odessa, or we cast in solar return in Altadena, it will be two different things. So if for example,
I see what you mean.
If I spent this year back to Odessa, I will be ascendant.
So what is your location for the relocated?
Altadena.
Altadena.
But if I Altadena, I am Cancer ascendant.
Where is Altadena?
Altadena, California.
Okay, got it. Oh, it's spelled like that. I've never spelled it before. Altadena with an E. So here we go. Relocated current. Okay, so
see, I'm a Cancer. So, and my son will be as a part more related to my boyfriend that I live right now with in Altadena. Otherwise, I would live with my sister and we will probably kill each other. It will be some major stuff. Now I have like development of relationship with my partner. So it's more, I'm dealing with how I deal on the personal level with people through Skype or Zoom. There's a 7th house stuff.
Right. Although we could also say, even from looking at Odessa, the solar return, we see that, the Mars rules the.
Some issues will be in 7th house as well, right?
Perhaps, yeah. I mean, you could maybe extrapolate that. I would probably just focus on the condition of the ruler of the period itself, the ruler of the year, the sun. But you could make that kind of judgment about the
and the 4th house,
the general chart.
The 4th house getting pretty packed and very significant with all the Saturn and Jupiter and Mercury. But if I'm here, it will be my 8th house of other people, money, resources, based on Altadena.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, I mean, I tend not to try to get too bogged down in the solar return. I usually just focus on the planet of the year. There's this book on solar revolutions by Abu Mashar, which isn't strictly Hellenistic, but it's more
but Abu Mashar
medieval.
is it's medieval times.
Yeah,
The author.
yeah.
Okay.
So he has a bunch of chapters about like how to interpret the house location of the ruler of the year in the solar return.
Mm-hmm.
So he would have an interpretation. For example, I can look it up really quick. So okay, so 111. Okay, so here's what he would have to say about the fact that you're in a sun-ruled year and the sun is in the third house of the solar return. He would say, and don't get too alarmed, sometimes his delineations can be kind of extreme and sometimes don't make a whole lot of sense. But here's what he would say. Likewise, if he, the sun, were Lord of the year, appearing in the 9th or in the 3rd in the 2 times of a good condition, he will go on a foreign journey by reason of some officials, and he will be praised by many, and his brothers and blood relatives will have faithfulness and advantage through him. Likewise, he will be helped by them. But if he were of a bad condition in these places, he will be disparaged on account of doctrines, and he will take a useless journey in which he will suffer impediment, and he will be saddened by some pilgrims and by his brother and blood relatives.
I love ancient texts. There is no good thing. It's always will be like the worst case.
Well, right. Well, he says if it's in bad condition or good condition, that these are the different things. Obviously, some of those things are more 9th house as opposed to 3rd house. He combines them when he talks about them because the 3rd is opposite to the 9th, and so they do have some similar qualities. But I think I would say, with the sun being in the 3rd house, it's always going to be a nocturnal chart. So the sun is always going to be contrary to sect in the 3rd. Mm-hmm. There's nothing really malefic about the sun in this, except for the fact that I guess you could say it's because it's conjunct Pluto. Of course, he didn't know about Pluto, so he had no way of interpreting that. But it's not like the sun was square Mars at the time of the solar return. If Mars was square your sun in the 3rd, then we might think, okay, this might be someone who would have more troubles this year, potentially, especially from health matters, because Mars is in the 6th square Venus, square Sun.
The Sun in superior position to Mars, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing to keep in mind, Yevgen, is not only is it transits of the sun which are emphasized for the year, but also transits to your natal sun. So this is a way that we can kind of narrow down which transits are really going to be important. And one of the things that occurs to me about this year in relation to your sun is the fact that at the end of the year, you will have this Venus retrograde transit on top of your sun.
That's what I want to talk about, the Venus retrograde, by the way, because I'm just still recovering my progress chart. Mercury that's finally start being direct. So now I'm getting smart again.
So this is really close to the time that the sun is coming back around to your next perfection year, your 12th. But before you get there, Venus stations retrograde very close to your sun and makes this transit over your sun. So we know that this is one of the major transits for the year because the sun is the ruler of the year. And we know that transits to your sun are going to be the most important ones. So we would say that this Venus retrograde is happening in the 4th house, but in the solar return 3rd, right? So we might say that this is a time of social drama or scandal in one's domestic sphere, or even with one's neighbors or roommates or siblings. since Venus is the planet of unification, that's what gives us the idea that this could be a kind of social occasion. But the fact that Venus is moving retrograde shows that it may not act in ways that are anticipated or necessarily positive. It could be a time also of social breakdowns or social dramas, and so that's why I would associate with that. And I would think, since it's happening in the fourth house as well, we might expect this as we might expect this to be a kind of a time of perhaps contact with one's parents, because Venus is reunifying. Venus unifies, but
yeah, Venus, it's the ruler of my first house, so it's I would say it's me, and Sun is the father. Maybe I give a call, or he will reach out, or something will be related to the
perhaps
father,
because we do know that Venus is opposite to Saturn. Now, what's interesting, yes, you're right. Venus is your overall ascendant ruler. So in general, we know that Venus retrogrades and cycles of Venus are probably central to your experience of the general transits
and the past,
in this,
right?
Yeah. Well, so that's another thing, is you can also look back at the previous times that Venus would have gone retrograde in this part of your chart. And Venus is very easy in this respect, because Venus goes retrograde in the same place of the zodiac every 8 years. So we would say that for everyone, that their experience of this upcoming December 2021 to January 2022 Venus retrograde is going to be very similar to their experience of December
8 years ago.
Yeah, 8 years ago. January 2014 was the last time Venus went retrograde in Capricorn, and oftentimes you do see a kind of thematic resemblance. Now, 8 years prior was not a time when the sun was activated as a Time Lord, so your experience would be different depending on what planet was activated in that time. But as a general recurrence, you do see variations on a theme, and I would think that the theme with Venus retrograde seems to be times of novel social situations, which can occasionally be very pleasant or remarkable in that way, but also potentially scandalous, or times of social breakdowns, because Venus is acting irregularly.
Wow.
So you would have to think about what Venus was doing in that part of your chart. I know for myself, when I think back, that Venus retrograde was when my son was born. He was born during that Venus retrograde. So when he turns 8 at that time, that will be like his coming into Venus. So maybe that would be like his first crush, something like that.
I rescued my dog
in January 2014.
No, it was in around about Thanksgiving that year. So literally like several days, like week before maybe Thanksgiving. That's why I did it. I'm like, okay, I have to give thanks, and I need something good for myself. So I was like completely alone, living in Los Angeles.
But the dog gave you companionship.
Yes, and it's like friend.
Man's best friend.
Yeah.
And that's
and
sweet.
It was maybe, and I broke up with a person.
You broke up with someone during the last Venus retrograde in Capricorn?
Yeah, that year. I'm not sure when, because we was in and out 6 months after we decided to kind of split and move out.
So we have some of the fourth house themes there, as well as
my domestic partner then, and and after
Venus.
Yeah.
I think, oh gosh, I remember the Venus retrograde prior to that, at the end of 2005 into 2006. That was kind of embarrassing for me. But I do remember it well. I don't know how much more I should say about it, but I suffice to say it's
You're on the
probably
record.
it's probably more on the sort of social scandal side, I guess. Basically, it was very, very odd. I remember it was right around New Year's of 2005, going into 2006. So I think for me it was in my sixth house, and I was only um like 19 or 18. I forget exactly how old it would have been at that time. And but I remember I there was a girl that I had been interested in for a long time in high school, and we finally got to kind of hang out in a more extended way. But it was kind of weird because I felt like I'd wanted to be with her for so long that in some ways I was kind of off-put by the fact that I had been rejected. In a weird way, like being intimate with her, I kind of realized that maybe it wasn't something I wanted. And so it was very confusing.
But you mentioned sixth house. How
Oh.
it's to have a relationship, it would be hard labor. Like, you are affected by physical body.
Well, yeah. I mean, I realized that I didn't really want to pursue things with her. So in a situation where it was supposed to be kind of intimate, I wasn't really up for it, shall we say.
So you say if you would happen at fifth house, it would be more prone to
I might have perhaps I might have been more up for it. Perhaps I don't know. It was weird. It was a very strange thing. I thought that it was something I wanted, but then when I actually got into the situation,
it's like, oh, too much
sort of
work.
realized I didn't want. I realized I didn't really want to pursue things, and so
too complicated, too difficult. Which is sixth house.
Perhaps, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I there is a way it relates, but I don't know if I want to be. Well, I don't want to be explicit about it.
Fair enough. Well,
so I didn't feel very good.
So but again, you mentioned sixth house. I'm trying to apply that to your experience that you described more of a relationship, but the sixth house.
Well, like I said, Yevgen, I thought I was up for intimacy.
For job.
No, with her. And it turned out that I when it came to the moment, I was not ready or not maybe psyched out. I wasn't ready for it. And so it was that was kind of how it was sixth house ish, in my view. But yeah, it's a tad embarrassing. It doesn't have anything wrong with me.
We have all those moments.
I mean, it was obviously wasn't a problem later on, because then 8 years later, in 2014, that was when my wife and I had a baby. So obviously that wasn't when we got pregnant, but that was when we had the baby. So obviously there wasn't any sort of issues in the Venus department in that time. But at 18 I was it was a weird experience.
It's age appropriate to do those mistakes.
Right.
I have another question.
Yeah.
So we just applied two techniques: perfection year and solar return. So what's the solar arc? What it gives us? What's the information? And what's the difference with a solar arc and progress chart?
So, to my understanding, solar arcs are like a progression.
So it's nothing changed. You just have like certain speed. We move the chart down, like with like soul development or what's
So it's. I'm trying to remember exactly what it is supposed to show us. All I know is that it is a method of directing planets in the
Okay.
chart according to a
I'll take over.
fixed rate of motion. I can
If I got it correct. So, progress chart, every planet has its own speed. So, and then every year, the motion happen all the time. And then we just, if I born Libra, 4-degree Libra, then it's every year it will be go 5, 6, 7, and eventually I change the sign. And some planets will be faster. Some planets will be like the like Pluto and other like generational planets. They go like, technically my retrograded Saturn will never go direct in the progress chart. Solar arc, the speed of all every single planet will go exactly the same speed that other planets. It just literally, my chart will be just moved.
Right. So yeah, you can basically, yes, secondary progression is the main progression method that people use and that I know
It's
most
like
about, which is
every
like
day,
a degree for a day per year.
Yeah. It's but how we interpret that.
So the way that I use secondary progressions is to, okay, let me just create the progress chart real quick. Secondary progression, natal. So the way that I use them, yeah, I don't really use them in the way that I think a lot of other people use them, but I basically, what I do is I use the secondary progression as a way of timing out eventualities that are suggested in the natal chart.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example,
so I'm Scorpio right now, so but it's internally. So I look as Libra, a little bit older, but still Libra, my physicality. But my software, whatever I went through, will be more Scorpionic, more reflective, less shallow, more driven by introspection.
So, for example, what I would wait. Let me do this. Okay, so for example, in your natal chart, Yevgen, you have Venus. Venus is in your Venus is sextile by sign to your Mars, right? Venus is not sextile by degree, but it is sextile by sign. Now, there is a point in progression where Venus will make that sextile with your Mars. It was something that wasn't exact at the point of birth, but by progression, it eventually does happen. It will happen.
Because Venus, a little bit faster than Mars.
Because Venus, exactly. Yeah. So when we look at your progressed chart, yeah, let's go back a few years. Mm-hmm. We can see that Venus eventually did catch up to making that sextile with Mars that was suggested in your chart. So let's see exactly when that happened. So it would have happened.
Let me guess, 2008.
Yeah, it's on its way there. It's 1997 right now. 8, 9, 10, 11, almost there.
Oh, when I won green card lottery.
So Venus would have finally completed its sextile to Mars in 2005 is when it would have been exactly exact. And so I would say that like it would be at that point where you might have seen the natal potential of that Venus Mars sextile by sign to be kind of fully realized, because that's when it finally did end up happening. And in a similar way, you could look at when other planets sort of have perfected their aspects. So like one thing that's always stuck with me is looking at the the years where a planet either stations direct or retrograde by progression. So for
So my
example,
Mercury in retrograde, what else in retrograde? Saturn, nothing.
let's see.
Yeah.
So
The personal planets, only Mercury still kind of like going stupid.
So you were born with Mercury direct, and it went retrograde.
But
I
it was
believe,
like slowing
18
down,
days.
right?
Yeah, 18 days after you.
Is it shadow? Like what, pre-shadow?
Yeah. I mean, I guess we could say your Mercury was in the shadow period.
Yeah.
Let's see. Mercury would have eventually gone direct.
I did a reading about my Mercury,
10.
and it's, if I got the concept correct, so it's Mercury was used backwards. So I was learning something that I will not be per se use directly, but then I will be revisiting that and start again. In the house of creativity, sexuality, children, whatever.
Right. So I think it's interesting that let's see, by progression, you would have been around 18 years old when Mercury first went retrograde. So this was in 1995. So, oh, sorry, you would have been about 20 when Mercury went retrograde. Or 19 rather.
Yeah, I started
19.
I started doing audition for acting jobs that I hated, but I thought that's what I meant to be. So I was like doing all those things that
So
career, because other people told me that I'm like, oh, you cute, you like, you know.
So we know that like Mercury going retrograde as well, like that. When did you, I often find that like Mercury going retrograde, that's where you're having to relearn things that you knew but in a different way. So like when did you start learning English, for example?
When I moved to United States,
which would have been
2006, 2000.
Did you
2005. Yeah.
Had you learned any English prior to coming?
Oh, I always trying to translate the pop rock songs and stuff.
Yeah.
It always wasn't my life because I'm like Westerner and the escapist. So it's always like I live here. It's not interesting because it's available, but whatever like far away, it's always like dreamland. It's always like perfect, and you know.
So it's interesting to me that it would have been like Mercury would have been reaching the end of its retrograde period by progression in the years where you were adapting to, you know, a new
and it's
language.
Still slow, even though it just stops and started going direct. Right now, I'm still kind of struggling with my Mercury.
I mean, well, Mercury is by progression, Mercury is still, you know, it's now going back over the degrees where it had gone retrograde. So, you know, I know from my own life, I was born with Mercury retrograde, and the degree that when I basically my Mercury stationed direct by progression when I finally when I moved away from Germany and came to another English-speaking country, the United States. So I was kind of like relieved of having to speak a different language, and I had also struggled with speech since I was a child, and so it seemed like Mercury going direct again by progression was me being able to just resume, I guess, in a more constructive way, you know, with speech and language. So,
and maybe you can relate to it. So now I realize, rebounding with my Ukrainians, that I start forgetting my language, living in the country 15 years already.
That's also really interesting because by progression, your Mercury is also in the 4th house.
Yeah, it's
so
like
it's not.
I'm not there and not here. Still, I'm like progressing with English, but regressing with Ukrainian, but as soon as it goes as fast as in 3-4 years, it will be like because probably I will be back and forth, Ukraine, America.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
So really, I mean, really, the way that I use secondary progression is almost like a Time Lord, method where, you basically you take the two planets that rule two houses, and if you want to see when they happen in the life, just time out their perfection by progression, and you'll arrive at a time period where you would expect that eventuality to be unlocked. And that's kind of similar to the way that Valens and other ancient authors from the Hellenistic tradition, would take two planets in aspect, add them together, and then look at the year that they came out to, add the minor periods of those planets together, as another way of seeing when an aspect eventuates. So in your chart, for example, we would say, that the moon has a general period of 25 years, and Saturn has a period of 30 years. So we'd say that at age 55, you would come upon the full activation of the moon and Saturn. They would also say that you would experience activations of the moon and Saturn at the halfway point and the third points of that combination. So 55 divided by 2, that's like 27.5.
Okay, 27.
27.5. So we would think that an activation of the moon Saturn might have occurred at 27 and a half. You could also divide 55 into 3, which is 55 divided by 3 is 18.33. 18, that would have been 1975 plus 18.
Yeah, 18, I finished.
1993.
Yeah, I finished medical school and left the home after parents' divorce and drama.
1993, that would have been...
And 18, right? 36 plus...
Yeah, so 1993, that would have been the other activation of the moon Saturn, which would have taken place kind of close-ish to the time your father kicked you and your mother out.
And Neptune conjunct my sun, which is I try first time dissociative drugs.
I see. So that's how we can kind of use the combination periods. You can also look at the ascensional times of the signs and combine those to get aspect activation. So I just bring that up to basically show the way I kind of use secondary progressions in a similar way. I'm not always keeping track of like the secondary progressed moon, although I know people do and you can. But I feel like there's so much to kind of pay attention to and look at that you have to, in some ways, narrow your focus.
And you have already like some advanced knowledge of it because it's,
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I've had some time, to look over it. It's not that I don't think it's useful or meaningful. I think it is. I just you have to prioritize what you put your time into, and then so I've been so fascinated by these Time Lord sequences and planetary activations, and looking at the lots and zodiacal releasing that I don't always have the brain space to keep also like secondary, tertiary progressions and solar arc directions.
How long you already doing it?
I've been doing astrology since I was about 15.
And it's my only second year doing it. Can you imagine how
But
yeah.
you have to also keep in mind though that there was life I didn't decide at 15 that I was going to be a professional astrologer. It took a long time for me to even become comfortable with it was just a hobby.
To get out from the closet. Astrological closet.
Well, I don't want to compare being an astrologer to I don't want to do that lightly. I know that
Yeah.
that's a very agonizing thing for a lot of people. So I wouldn't want to trivialize that experience by comparing it to being, afraid about how people would perceive me as an astrologer. Even if I can see the similarity in the experience, I don't want to trivialize other people's
As
experiences.
a gay man, I can use this terminology.
And plus, I'm very privileged as it comes. As a cis, straight, white, British, a person of average, middle class means. I mean, I've had privileges, so I don't want to.
You have a great school there, so which is considered as a legit school, which helps a lot.
You mean the School of Astrology?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's No, I mean I've been really I've been very honored and lucky, to come across the right people, who were able to kind of point me in this direction. My life probably would have been completely different if I hadn't met and become friends with Chris Brennan. That's at 17 years old.
That's what it was the first door, Chris Brennan book on Hellenistic astrology.
Yeah, I met Chris at my first loosing of the bond on Spirit. So that was the huge turning point, was meeting him on MySpace and him introducing me to Hellenistic astrology. So
can we predict when I meet mine, when the similar situation will be in my chart? I set up alarm. I said, Siri, Google, remind me. So the teacher of my life will come in.
Right. I mean, that's a really good question.
Maybe it happened already.
Well, I mean, I would imagine you must have been touched by some muse, the Astro Muse, in order to get to where you are now. I mean, normally I would associate coming into contact with your teacher, at like maybe a big Jupiter transit, especially to Mercury, or like a big like I know that one of my big leap forward in astrology in some ways was when Jupiter was on my Mercury trine Uranus. I think that was in 2006. That was like my big year where like I just had this just quantum leap in understanding. I went from like sun sign astrology and kind of cookbook interpretations to just finding out that astrology was this whole other world practically of information and endless avenues for exploration. But for you, let's see, I mean, when did you start getting more seriously into astrology? When did you?
So 4 years ago, 3.5, something like that, when I was in college studying fashion and didn't care about that, but because people told me, and at that moment I was running my business for 5 years, making pretty shiny things for celebrities. I got over it. I took out of the system that thing, and I started researching for myself pictorial tarot. So I start going through the Aleister Crowley books, a bunch of books, pictorial tarot, and accidentally I just learned, as I learned later, precursor language for astrology, which is
what was this in 2018?
Yes. So I
remember when.
But, 3 years ago, it was pictorial tarot, and as you know, when you start watching YouTube tutorials and algorithms programmed the way that correlates to other esoteric hermetic studies, alchemy, hermeticism. I took 3 months class by Mitch Horowitz on Manly P. Hall book, Secret Teachings of All Ages, which is give you all the spectrum historic of development of faith and religious cults and rituals. So it was good base for me to enter astrology. And probably one of the algorithmically programmed video hooked Chris Brennan podcast. So I'm like, oh, astrology, it's not like divination. I'm like completely put myself in a trance. It's very methodical technology to learn about time cycles.
Yeah.
It's almost anything you can find the object there, which will be like arrow on the clock on the wall, telling you, okay, collect the data, see how often it repeats and how exact it repeats. Find something that cycles exact cycle and then name it. So revolution accurate will be Uranus, because Uranus come back to the same position. So that when I grasp that thing, I'm like, oh, pictorial tarot is fun, but I want to do this, because when you traveler and put yourself in the dangerous situation, unpredictable situation, you need certain system that you can predict as much as you can. So
Right.
at that moment, I was damaged already that much, and it was my 44 years. As you know, as a dark moon winter person, 44, it hits us very hard. And it was like literally, I realized all my life before was rehearsal to gather experiences. So it will be good painting for my astrology, not per se astrologer career, but esoteric artist who understand the language. Because I'm sure you will,
artist,
I will never get to the point like you or Chris Brennan, because you're more mercurial and more academic than me. I am more of artistic expressive.
Well, hey, and that's cool. I mean, I don't think it's yeah, I certainly wouldn't I don't know. I think that I think there are many different ways of engaging with this material, and no, you don't have to be just like me or like Chris Brennan. I mean, I see Chris Brennan, and I think he is, he's even more, he's much more of like a scholar, than I am.
Yeah. I'm not. I've never been.
Yeah, I'm just obsessive, I mean, really, before I was ever like a professional, I suppose, before I was accepting, payment for doing these. I mean, I was an enthusiast. I was, an intense hobbyist. I mean, it was an all-consuming kind of passion, and I was into like pretty advanced astrology, but I still considered myself, just a student. I mean, in many ways, I don't think anyone stops being a student, no matter how advanced they get. I'm sure Rob Hand would probably say, you never really stop learning, and that
but I'm realistic about my intellectual ability, because for what you and Chris, what you guys do, that you archive memorize huge amount of very intricate mercurial information, which is hurts my brain.
Right. Well, it hurts mine too sometimes.
Yeah.
So Yevgen, I just noticed, well, number one, in your chart, the 9th house is the place that's most closely associated with like divination or divinatory topics, higher learning, one's relationship to religion or philosophy, or these kinds of occult topics. And you have your Mercury in a close square with Uranus. And so one of the things that's kind of interesting about 2018 is 2018 was when Uranus ingressed into Taurus, completing an opposition to your natal Uranus and the square to your Mercury. And that is absolutely a time when I would say this would be someone who would be experiencing an awakening, a mental awakening to a new way of thinking, and making a kind of a discovery, a revelatory discovery, a disruptive, discovery. And this seems to really match pretty well, like the way you've described. I mean, you were just hit by the astrology train.
I changed my major in my college 4 times when it started. So can you imagine, after like almost 2 years of college studying fashion, history of arts and everything, now it helps me because it gives you like if I see the movie or the historic film, I'm already identified. You don't have to tell me what's the, so it helps that historic thing. And then I realized, no, I don't want to do that. And I start jumping from the fashion to digital multimedia. Then I realized that I don't want to stay on the computer all my life and doing like tweaking stuff that I can do by hands instinctually. Then I change it to psychology degree, and finally I end up television, radio, and film right now on that program. So, and if you ask me, do I want to do it? No, but I need a degree to be considered as a professional person with like decent education. So when I'm, even if I will be astrologer, people look at me like I am legit person, just for my Capricornial sun moon demands. So to be taken serious, or
I would
as an
say,
artist astrologer.
yeah, I mean, I would say, yeah, esoteric artist is a great way of putting it. You know, your ruler of the ninth is conjunct the ruler of the first. So we know that it's not just your instinct with this would be to you know, to create things with it rather than just study. And I think that, I mean, there is a definitely a desperate need, I think, for astrology multimedia, you know, that is you know, more on the level of something you might see on Netflix, you know, as
Absolutely.
to,
I want to do book,
know,
I want to do film, I want to do podcast, I want to do this.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
I'm your promoter. I'm just not there yet for reason of my low self-esteem, professional low self-esteem.
But you're going, but you're going to get there, Yevgen. You're going to get there. Yeah.
Now I have to pay you guys, but soon you will pay me. You need a book? You need a cover on your magazine?
You know, I see your Saturn in the 10th, and I can see where you might have that feeling of not being
perfect,
good enough, you know. But I mean, I think it's important to remember, though, that, I mean, everyone,
Black Swan, she just wanted to be perfect, and she never gets to that feeling. But on the process of perfecting, you finally get to the point and die never satisfied.
It's the struggle of yeah, I mean, it's the process itself generates the result.
I'm still biting my nails. Yep. It's bugging me, and I need to just right now I'm finishing Achyuta Bhavadasa class, Modern Mystic, and I'm taking Rick Levine class for Astrohub. So I'm kind of two approaches, ancient astrology, traditional, and modernized with all those like sextile, semi-square, and like lots of intricate and math-oriented stuff. But I'm absorbing as much as I can. I'm still recovering after 3 years of governmental college. So, and when I figure out with Gray Crawford, he's a Mercury guy, right?
Yeah.
He likes to do that thing. I did reading with him, and he says, you did 3 years of your college when your Mercury was slowest and like retrograding and then stationary and just go. So I'm still in the process of reconsideration and figure out who am I as a sign? Am I like, what's the mercurial function of me in the community? Because, you know, as Mercury, it's your educator, as a messenger of the god, as a communicator. How I'm going to communicate it through the film, through the media, through all and I've done it already before doing art. So
through, we'd say through innovation, through speech, through interview, through dialogue, through you know, all the means of Mercury. So I would think that all of the things you are planning to do are really very nicely in line with your Mercury Venus in the 5th house of creative pursuits. And
if it's not the fun, I'm not gonna do that.
I mean, I would say that your chart really supports that very well. I mean, I think the same combination of Mercury, Venus, square Uranus, accounts for many ways your interest in fashion and your accomplishments in design. And because the thing is, Venus is aesthetic, but Mercury is more logistical. So when we kind of combine Mercury and Venus together, we get the sense not only something that looks good, but is functional and has sort of mathematical kind of planning or organization behind it. We get really the notion of aesthetic design.
But that's why I love Hellenistic astrology and respond to it very well, because it's elegant. Because out there so many systems in astrology that I don't resonate, because it's not as elegant and simple and elegant, period.
Right. I mean, I also think there's a tendency for some people to say, well, if it's simple, then it's not true or something. It's like in the debate.
Don't make complicated stuff that can be simple.
Yeah, I mean,
yes.
That's not to say that this stuff is totally simple. I think there's so much to pay attention to that you have to be able to narrow your focus in some ways.
But it just doesn't hurt my eyes, my aesthetic senses, when it's like elegant.
Yeah,
but it has to be pretty.
Not
in that shallow my previous 44 years of but in like a beauty of relationship, beauty of expression. So it has to be balanced, and for Libras it's very important to have this equally represented ingredients.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So where we at? We still have how
I mean, if you if it's if we're going on too long, I can always refund the time.
Don't worry about it.
But yeah. I'm happy to use the full time.
So do we have time to discuss my diamond, what it is and where I can find it?
Sure. So daimon is the term
it's the girl's best friend.
Yeah, there you go. So the daimon is the name given to I guess in English it means vaguely something like spirit, or like a guardian spirit or guardian angel. I must admit I'm not entirely familiar with all of the different Greek ideas about daimons and where they fit into the kind of pantheon or hierarchy of spiritual beings, but it's my understanding that daimons are a kind of intercessing sort of minor semi-god, semi-deity that is assigned to you at birth, and that kind of nudges you one way or the other. Kind of like how in cartoons, you'll see like there's like the angel demon on one side, the angel on one side, and the demon on the other. The devil one is kind of telling you, oh yes, eat that chocolate bar, or yes, kill that person. The one on the other side saying, no, don't do that. And I think that's kind of the way that I think it's kind of a simplified way of how the daimons are supposed to be interacting with us on Earth. And on even with the names of the houses in the ancient Greek, they call the 11th house the good daimon, and the good spirit, and the 12th house is the evil spirit. So even in just the houses, they kind of have this notion that the 11th is helpful, like a good daimon or a good angel.
Good wishes.
The 12th house is more like a house which leads one to vulnerabilities, and weaknesses and catastrophes and enemies, etc. So the evil one, the evil spirit. But beyond that, the lot of daimon, or the lot of spirit, is calculated by finding the secondary light, the light out of sect, and projecting it to the light of the sect in favor. So because you were born at night, the sun is your contrary to sect light. and the moon is about 7 degrees away from your sun, and the moon is your primary light, is your sect light. So you would project 7 degrees from the ascendant, 3 degrees Libra. So your lot of daimon, or your lot of spirit, ends up being at 27 degrees of Virgo. So that is the location of the lot of spirit. The part of your chart that's supposed to, I guess, represent the beginning point of the activities of your life, insofar as your influence to act in ways that are guided by, I guess, the daimon. Like you're being nudged to act in a way by the releasing from the lot of daimon, the lot of spirit.
So if it's 12th house, traditionally considered of the house of enemies, probably in my case, foreigners, because as we know, by ancient language, everything from other tribe is already automatically enemy. Others, yes.
Yeah.
Something that you don't know. That technically, like your back of your head, that everybody sees except you, and where you came from to go away, right? When the soul manifests in the matter, trying to escape something behind you. And the Virgo, it's tarot card, the Hermit, so it's a solitude, sitting in front of the computer, all alchemist who in the lab doing something one-on-one with the technology or whatever. This lantern he holds and the tarot represent, right? The source of the light. So it's me being a lonely child, alone for 7 years of my life before I go to the world. Do I understand it correct?
Yeah, I think so. So there's a few different ways we can look at your lot of spirit. So yes, you could consider the house placement of the rule of the lot. I think the probably the more important thing to keep in mind is just that the lot of spirit is cadent to the lot of fortune, and the lot of fortune is angular in your chart because you have the lot of fortune in the first place, whereas your lot of spirit is in the 12th. So in general, we might say that the lot of fortune has a stronger role in bringing about the outcomes of your life. In other words, chance plays a bigger role potentially in your life than your own choices, because the lot of spirit is supposed to represent our intrinsic motivations for action.
So this is little demon who tell me black or white, day or night, and it's this whisper. I have to do this like dual choice.
We might say that with it being in the 12th house, perhaps one's actions could lead one astray, whereas fortune would be looking out for you really well because fortune is angular with the ascendant. It's also ruled by the benefic of the sextant favor, Venus. So we would say that your fortune is really well supported, whereas Mercury, your lot of spirit is just less emphasized. It's less able to provide the effects of one's motivations and actions. Now, that's not to say that your Mercury would always be bad as acting as the ruler of your lot of spirit. We can see the ruler of your spirit is conjunct your lot of fortune. So we would say that even though maybe your actions have less ability to bring about the outcomes in your life because it's cadent to fortune, that the ruler of your spirit is applying to the ruler of fortune. So we would say that to whatever capacity you do affect your outcomes in life, that it would be trending towards the support that Venus would be giving to the role of chance. And we would also say that when the lot of spirit releases to the signs angular to fortune, that those would be times where you would be able to make choices which have a larger impact in your life. And we would say that they would have the potential to be somewhat fortunate because in Libra, because Venus rules the sign. But because Saturn is in superior position, there would also be significant obstacles to overcome. It wouldn't be easy. Your motivations to act and your occasions for action would just be Venus-y, essentially.
Mhm.
So we can tell that uh, when you release from Virgo, you would have spent the first 20 years with Spirit in this sign in which it's not so capable of affecting its own state. We would say that you were less able to make conscious choices that would affect your life in this time, because the lot is cadent relative to the ascendant and to fortune, and the ruler
And then
is
an
also,
aversion as well. We consider the aversion situation.
yeah. So yeah, the lot is in aversion to the lot of fortune, and the ruler of the lot is also in aversion to itself. So that those first 20 years, fate would have, rather chance, the role of chance would have played a greater role
Like
in
a
your life, because
like a
fortune was
leaf
not
on the wind.
right. Now this changed though after 1994, because then then your lot of spirit released to the sign of fortune, and it would take on Venus as its motivations for action, and it would be able to act in ways which are more beneficial. So we would say that perhaps it would have been after age 20 that you would have come into your own as like an artist and a artistically inspired person, because Venus took on the role of your motivations for action in that time, and that you would have done this, and despite overwhelming obstacles from Saturn, that you still would have been trying to pursue these more Venusian pursuits. Um,
Follow like question popping up. So next year will be activation of this house. Will Diamond will be like participate in this situation?
so next year, you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay, so all right, so skipping ahead
Oh, I'm sorry.
to no,
Okay,
that's fine.
just...
That's fine. No, it's okay. No, we can skip ahead to now. So I was just gonna say that, yeah. So there was this 15-year period, but after you got through that, now you're in this cadent period relative to fortune. Now it's not the worst cadent period possible, because it's still in an aspect to the ascendant, but it is still a weaker time. So we would say that your actions would have potentially less impact to affect your circumstances. Now, that's not to say this period is altogether unfortunate. The ruler of the period is Jupiter in Pisces, which isn't too bad, and Mars, which is present in the sign, is of the sextant favor. You could even throw in the fact that the North Node is in there, so this is a place of increase. And with Neptune, we might associate this with activities that relate to sort of virtual media or
media,
other kinds
goddess
of
of media. Yeah.
yeah, with Neptune in the third. So it's not an altogether bad period, but it is like a preparatory period. But say this is kind of leading up to the main actions of the next angular period. Now, within this time, there are going to be some ups and downs. So right now, you are in an Aquarius level 2 period, which is very fortunate because it contains Venus, your most fortunate planet. And while Saturn rules the sign, Saturn is in aversion to this sign. So Saturn isn't able to give its significations of being oppressive.
Unless I hire personal trainer and some kind of guru who wakes me up every 7 a.m. in the morning and with the stick. It sounds to me like this is the solution how to handle this energy most productive in most productive
Yeah,
way.
so I mean, what this really tells us is that uh, that this period of August 12th, 2020 through January 29th, 2023 would be an important period for completing artistic and intellectual pursuits, because it's in a succeedent sign relative to the ascendant and fortune. So it's a completion period, and it's geared towards the activities of Venus and Mercury, artistic and intellectual endeavors. The general rulership of the time is by Saturn, so we might say this might just be like a, it might just show that it takes sort of a long amount of time to get done or a lot of effort or something like that. But Saturn wouldn't be oppressive towards this period because it's in aversion. So it doesn't really factor into as much
But
as we might
transition
otherwise
in
think.
Saturn there right now. So
Now, so next year, one of the big things that happens next year is you have this loosening of the bond on January 22nd, 2022.
Oh, 2. Wow.
Yeah, a lot of twos.
Yeah.
And so we know that this will be a point at which you'll be able to release what you've been working on, perhaps, where you'll be able to, you'll be ready to kind of move forward with showing what you've been working on up to that point. Now, I should say, though, the sun is in aversion to Leo, so we might not expect as much from this period as we might otherwise. I mean, it would still be positive because Venus and Mercury are still showing, they're still opposing the period, but the sun itself is in aversion. So, but luckily, so is Saturn. So
it's like I'm on my own.
I guess
like sun, it's the solar purpose, karmic purpose, Saturn, karmic punisher, and like checking your homework. So it's like you're on your own right now, whatever you gather, which is I'm doing right now. And I'm just guessing, when do I have to initiate the project of my dream?
Well, I would think that wouldn't be a terrible time to potentially release what you've been working on, but I would think that whatever happens in this time period of January 22nd, 2022 through March 10th, 2022 would be connected to your activities between May 14th to July 1st of 2021, because this loosening of the bond is connected to the activities of the foreshadowing period, the previous time you came into the Leo period. So I would think that there would be a connection between, like, this would be a time of maybe like having the first draft kind of finished or something, and then sort of further working on it until it's ready for being released, literally, because the loosening of the bond often has a kind of literal connection to something being liberated, freed, released. Something, it's like winding up the tension and springing forward. So we would also say the general nature of a loosening of the bond to Leo is, since it's happening in Aquarius period, we could say it's moving from darkness to light. Now, it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes darkness to light releasings can be bad. Releasings. I meant releasings.
Doesn't matter if it's like day chart or since I'm a creature of the night, so everything that darker as possible benefit me in my case, or it doesn't matter this.
Well, in this particular instance, Saturn doesn't have much to say because Saturn is in aversion to the Leo Aquarius axis. So Saturn's in aversion to both of these. So it doesn't have much to say about it. I mean, for other ones, it could, for your Libra or Aries periods or Capricorn periods, certainly we've seen that your Cancer to Capricorn and Capricorn Cancer periods could be pretty nasty, especially Cancer to Capricorn, because previous times you've had that, like on the Nemesis, that was when you were exiled from the home. So we would say that, if you came across a similar loosening like this on another lot, that it would be similarly negative kinds of circumstances. And this is how you can kind of use your experience with other lots to project how you'll do on releasings from other lots. So for example, we know that you will be coming into a Cancer period in 2027 with a loosening of the bond in January of 2029. So that is a time where we might expect a less fortunate time in your professional activities. But
if I right now, still alive, 29.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Make sure you live, and you'll get there and you'll be able to get past it. You were able to survive. Plus, this is a lot of spirit, which has to do with actions rather than the body.
Just you have to be willful and capable to move the body in the physical space, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. So, yeah. But as for like next year, I mean, I would say the beginning of next year looks fairly positive because the loosing of the bond is happening to a sign ruled by the sun. It's a darkness to light loosing. The loosing of the bond is in opposition to the Venus and Mercury. It makes me think that it would be a time of being able to birth a project, or to reach a releasing point of one's of something you've been working on up to that point. So that's
Patrick. So if I have two projects of my life, one artistic and another one to find the place to live or build, to buy the land and build the home. So how we identify which one when? One, it's intellectual property collaboration with others, and another one, collaboration with my partner, who is in charge of the material resources. So, and I'm there as a collaborator to zhuzh up everything, plan, and to help. So how we identify when is the best time to initiate one project and another one, and which lot belongs to which?
Using Zodiacal releasing.
So the one artistic one completely relate on me and my ability to collaborate and to put the effort in my talent, and another one just to be able to show up and do what other people tell me to do, like the building house. So it's like, it's not, I can't do it on my own, obviously, but my partner planning to
well
do
it sounds like one is an activity of the mind, the other is an activity of the body, right?
Yeah.
So I would say the house stuff would be fortune, because it's to do with the body. You just be taking the orders to lift the wood and
recognize the opportunity,
all the sink,
suck
put
it
in the
up.
floor. Yeah. Whereas the other is about the activities of the mind, and your creative vision.
But it's very important to initiate a project on cycle, not off of it. So that's why it just confusing to me when you plan stuff, when you initiate, and when you finish it.
So,
and where I am right now.
Right. Yeah. Well, what's interesting about that is we would say that you're in a completing period right now. Because Aquarius, because for the lot of spirit, which has to do with creative visions, we would say that your the fact that you're in a succeedant period relative to fortune in this Aquarius L2 shows that you are in a process of completing something related to the mind, and that this finishes by January 29th, 2023. So you have the rest of this year and even through 2022, to see through this Venus Mercury project. After January 29th, 2023, you're in a new thing. It's all Jupiter.
So
Jupiter in the
6th. It's all like relates to the daily stuff and routine and just a job.
Yeah, but I think it would be pretty lush since it's Jupiter and Pisces.
Magic. Harry Potter.
It would yes. it would be pretty nice, I would imagine. I wouldn't look at that and think, yeesh. So,
as soon as it's not drugs, guns, and prostitution, I always say Jupiter multiply the experiences. You will spectrum from good and bad.
Right.
I'm done with it.
Right. I would say it would almost be like a pleasant vacation, because it would almost be like a period of rest or something, because it's
retreat to build the
because it's in the 6th. Well, let's see what happens with fortune in that same time period. So when we get to 1 sec, still there we go. So in 2022, the 2023, you'll be in a Virgo period, which in itself is kind of opposite to the Pisces period. So then the Pisces period, okay, October 2023.
So it will be Virgo and stuff. So sitting in the lab and collude with myself.
I mean, it might be, since both Fortune and Spirit are both cadent in that period. We might that is another indication, perhaps, that you'll be taking some time off, perhaps. After
ayahuasca retreat. Okay.
There you go. Since you would be in cadent periods on both lots. Now, when you get to December 2023, though, we would say that you enter another more active period for the body.
And I believe December 2023, my progressed moon will be in my first house, right?
Your progressed moon, we could check your progressed chart. Okay, signet progressed.
2003.
Your progressed moon will enter your progressed first house in October of 2023. Yeah. And will reach the ascendant.
And again, some kind of electric,
summer of 2024.
Some kind of electric shock on the way over there as well.
Well, it might have, I would think that might have already happened, depending.
It relates to fourth house of home, because Uranus ruling fourth house of Aquarius. So I guess it will relate to the home, roots, and mother. My mother has the natal moon in Aquarius, so it's just.
I see. Well, yeah, I suppose that could be relevant. So forget where we were. I think we were looking at your fortune releasing, insofar as it relates to maybe construction of this house.
Mm-hmm.
So you can tell that I suppose on fortune, you're also kind of in a completion period. You're in this Leo period between October 11th, 2020 through May 4th, 2022. And you have the loosening of the bond in that time. This is so finicky. 1 second. There we go. Loosening the bond comes March 23rd, 2022. So we would say this would sort of be, from this point of view, this would be the ultimate time to get a major physical project done, because this is when you come to the ending of this completion period on fortune. And then we would say that it would be after this point, May of 2022, that you maybe find yourself kind of exhausted or tired.
I'm already exhausted. Possible to be even more. But
so I guess this is what shows that you would be in a sort of more resting kind of state.
Till 2003, right?
This is in 2022 when this happens.
So, and then it will be done. And then after that, I can initiate completely new stuff.
With respect to fortune or spirit?
Fortune, because it relates to
the body. Yeah. Okay. We could say, December 25th, 2023 would be the beginning of when you would be,
because the fortune it depends on me.
Height of strength.
So I can initiate and sketch, sculpt, produce whatever on my own. But the house building, other people involved, and if they good. So
yeah, it has to do. Yeah, I think that would be more into the realm of fortune, whereas spirit would be more. Yeah, you're what you decide to do. So did you have any other questions about
eclipses? Maybe we can end up, if we have enough. We have literally 10 9 minutes. And eclipses, I was born right after eclipse, what that means in my chart.
Okay, so I think I just wanted to check and make sure that
Tell
you
me.
actually were born after an eclipse. So it looks like your last lunation was an eclipse. Like the actually no, not I shouldn't say that. Your prenatal lunation was actually just a regular full moon, but the new moon prior to your birth was a solar eclipse in Sagittarius. And I think that I mean, the significance of the new moon, Dimitri George has speculated that, because the moon has to do with the body and the sun sort of has to do with the soul, that the prenatal lunation is like when the soul enters the body. And the way that this point seems to be used in traditional astrology is as a kind of overall indicator of one's
Say it like it is. Don't try to be,
towards being like a healthy birth or like a deformed birth or having a violent death. Like Valens talks a lot about he talks a lot about how if you have the ruler of your prenatal lunation in a sign which is in aversion to the prenatal lunation, that this could be an indicator for violent death. Which I've tried to test this and it's not always accurate. It does, I mean, out of well, I don't want to say too much about that, but basically, yeah, I have tried to verify some of these statements about the prenatal lunation, and it's kind of hit or miss. But I would think on a conceptual level, it would say something about the soul group we come out of, because it's not just something which is unique to us; it's something which is true for everyone born within a 2-week period of that lunation. So it's hard to say that it would only matter for us.
So can my mother got sick literally before she gave birth to me with flu, and because it was the Christmas frost in my country, pretty tough, and she decided to like laundry stuff outside of the house, and she got sick, and I was born 3 weeks earlier than she expected.
Oh wow.
So she was very like fever and everything, pregnant woman, suddenly realized that, oh my God, I'm not ready. Everything, I want to be like, prepare everything for my birth so I don't have to work hard. I will be after labor, resting. So I need to like clean house, laundry, everything, like archive everything, make it pretty so people come to me and see my baby and everything will be perfect. But instead, she got sick because she got over probably stimulate her body and freezed her to almost death, and then just like start like contracting.
Wow. So knowing that and
I was born with like long mucus stuff that they pull out from me.
I gotta say, knowing this makes it sort of more clear that you are a moon Saturn birth as opposed to the moon Uranus, right? Because if the moon represents the mother, then it sort of makes more sense that she was like struggling with an illness at the time you were born, when the moon was applying to Saturn, by opposition. It sort of shows the difficulty that the mother was in at the time of the delivery. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and it's a cycle, so it will repeat again, and how often it repeats, and yeah.
Now, the fact that you came early is interesting. I guess
Mama
It
told me,
just
like,
makes me
literally, I
think
was
like
like,
the
get me
universe wanted
out
you to
of
come
her.
out. Yeah, like you had to come out. Like
She's not
you're-
nice to me here. I want her to like rest and everything, but she was like, and knowing my mother who has Mercury in sixth house of Mercury and Sun there, she's obsessive compulsive person who developed autoimmune disease because she was the like treated in the family like a slave. Technically she was like with her personality of executive and very strong willful person, very focused and like amazing scholar and like winner of the everything. She married a man who put her like sit home and do I'm telling you to do when I will be like doing my stuff. So she couldn't speak out. She developed eczema. So that I know my mother, she can move the mountains. And she's a very willful, forceful person, very masculine. So that body produced me, and I was like trying to get out. Like
right. Wow. So that's really interesting. So the fact that the fact that you were born close to that eclipse, I mean, perhaps
the energy, the cycle.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps it ties you to that eclipse. Perhaps if you looked at the times that these that eclipse recurred. In fact, I think you would have had one. I think. Wait, was that the same type of eclipse? It looks like this would have been close to the one we just had. The solar eclipse of December 2020. Wait, let me check that. South node. Oh no, it's an opposition. You're at a nodal opposition right now, so the nodes are in opposite positions.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so it's not.
It's in the third house of Sagittarius, escapist tendency, North Node conjunct the Neptune conjunct, and lesser malefic there. So it's a constant crave to escape, to not be happy with what you are, and that's what motivates.
I would think this would give someone the capability to create things which get out to a large audience, because the North Node is that's the upward trending pulse of the zeitgeist. And Neptune is mass communication and media and cinema and
glamorizing.
I mean, Facebook was created when Neptune was square the nodes. I mean, we've seen other there's other like ventures which have happened when Neptune is like conjunct the nodes or square the nodes, where it's like something which has like the ability to to meet the masses on a more kind of
propaganda
broad level. So there you go, propagandist. So I think having Neptune in the North Node on the third, and that would make you potentially good at creating compelling messaging, propaganda,
memes.
Yeah, there you go, memes or
consciousness squeezed in a very short period of time and relate to everybody. Yeah, pictorial tarot, by the way, this is it.
Yeah.
So we did like Titanic labor today.
I hope that I gave you kind of what you were hoping for.
Always.
Okay. All right. I hope that this was good.
I hope it was pleasurable for you as well.
Oh, of course. Yeah, again, you're a pleasure to speak with. Are you kidding?
Thank you, Patrick. So could you please send me the first video? I lost it. So
I can try to find that. I can't guarantee that I had. Let me just see what I have.
No worries. We got a lot, so technically it will be my material, as I said, for documentary or some kind of thing will be manifested for sure. And we digged a lot of interesting information here. And I'm sick and tired to talk about my chart already. I just want to take it out of the system and just then reflect on it like later. And I really appreciate your help.
Oh, you're very welcome.
So I'll go through that and to do some reflection on that video, and maybe we will meet up and move forward and discuss other topics.
Okay.
Something brewing. Yeah.
I was just
Something
seeing if
brewing.
I have. Okay, I have one from December. No,
I wouldn't.
I have one from May 6th,
Give it to me.
2020, and I have one from May 11th, 2020. I didn't think we had two that were that close.
I think we did, or with one with me and with my partner.
Oh, that's right. Oh, okay. It's saved as your name, but that's right. It was like under your name or something, so it showed up.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll have that one. I think the other one is on my laptop, which I have been having trouble getting on because it's sort of broken. But I'll see if I can get it. I'll send you the one I have.
No worries. It's if it meant to be, it meant to be. So
let me make sure this is the right one. Okay, here we go. Yeah, that was when I was still using my starry background. Okay. All right, Yevgen consultation, May 6th, 2020. It may take a while to get to you because it's going to be a large file, but I'll send that to you right now.
Are you using the WeTransfer?
No, I was just going to use Google Drive. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you can always download it and then you can delete it from Google, so Google doesn't spy on you.
Okay.
1 sec. Yeah. Okay. Nikatong@gmail.com. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So consultation recording. Alrighty, so that's beginning to upload now. So you'll get this in maybe several minutes.
Thank you so much.
All right. Is there anything else I can do for you, Yevgen?
Well, we're out of time and to initiate any, right? So
well, I thought I'd just ask, just in case it was something really small.
Well, if something could pop up, let me know. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome, Yevgen. It's been a pleasure.
Yep.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You too.